Welcome to the Neo Operational Video Series for Software version 3.7. These videos are designed for targeted instruction to get you up to speed quickly and simply. This video targets recording cues via command line. So there are several shortcuts and things that you can do to record cues, but we're going to talk about the traditional basic ways of recording cues. So just so we have some content, I'll just turn on 1 through 5 to full, and now I'm going to do the old traditional syntax for recording Q1. I'm going to say record Q1, enter. Okay, so there we are. I've recorded Q1. Two things have happened in addition to storing that information. Is if you look in your sidebar, you'll notice that we are put in the queue. So we know that by the yellow border around the box of the queue. Sometimes some of us refer to that as we're soaking in the queue. The other thing is if you look at 1 through 5, they are now released. They are no longer selected. So those are two things that happen automatically. Those two options are on by default. If you are in advanced mode in your system settings, you can turn those off if you need to. But in this traditional theatrical environment, this is pretty traditional. It's pretty typical. So if you look down at the command line, you'll see that it's gray and in italics, which lets us know that that has completed successfully. Notice after I hit the Q button, it said live on the command line in brackets. That just to let you know that the default mode you're in of recording live. Recording live will, just as a refresher, will record everything that's going out onto your system, with the exception of how these are set, whether it's including effects that are running, including any levels from submasters, and recording parameter information in palettes if it's referencing palettes, but that's for another video. So that's the traditional method of recording Q1, and that's fine. I'm going to turn on some more channels so we can do some more cues, 6 through 10 at 3. And now, instead of the traditional 4-key approach of record cue number enter, I'm just going to say record to enter. And that essentially accomplished the same thing. The only thing you're really missing now is it didn't tell you the default method of recording, but that's available in the yellow text there at the top of your sidebar, so that's no big deal. I'm now going to just say select previous, turn those channels out, and I'm going to now do another shorter way of doing it by just doing record enter. What record enter does is record the next available whole queue number at the end of the queue lists. So if you're working in order, going along with rehearsal, you can just do record enter to let the desk manage the queue numbers and not have to worry about it. I'm now going to grab 1 through 5, and we're going to turn those out, and I'm going to do what is probably the simplest way to record a cue via command line, and that's just hit the record button twice. So it's a little faster. Your hand doesn't have to move off the record key. You have less of a chance of some sort of a mistake of hitting the wrong key. So those are the 4 methods of cue recording syntax. Now let's talk about cue numbering. Let's just bring up some other channels. And we're going to look at recording and typing in the number. Again, you can type in whatever number you want at any time, but we're just going to say record 4.5 so that you guys can see, everybody can see that we can do point cues, but we can also do 2 digits and 3 digits on the point cue. So you can get pretty specific if you need to. Most people don't get that far. Stage managers generally don't like calling extra numbers if they don't have to. So, but it is available if needed. We're now going to talk about using different cue record types. So I'm going to go back to turning on 1 through 10. And let's look at the different record types. So again, at the top of the sidebar, you have the indication that we're in the default of record live, but what are the other options and how do we get to them? So if I hit record and then Q, it says record live. Again, everything is going out of the desk is being recorded. If I hit the Q button again, I get to toggle to the next option, selected. Recording selected means that you're only recording what you have currently selected or with the red boxes around it. This is really good in a lot of different circumstances. If you're dealing with multiple cue lists, it's very important. When you're recording groups, if you're recording group with a cue on stage and you only want to record what you have selected. So there are a lot of different applications for record selected. I'm going to hit the Q button again. And we're going to go to the third option, which is active. The definition of active is a channel that has a level above 0. So record active will only record channels that have a level above 0. One might say, well, what's the difference in recording live? If you're dealing with a conventional rig, there's really no difference. However, if you are dealing with attributed fixtures, let's say you've got a moving light, you pointed it stage right onto a particular piece of scenery, you turned it on, you found that you're not really going to need it, you turn it back off, and you do a record. If you're recording active, even though that light is pointed in a certain direction, it has no intensity, therefore it will be ignored and it will go back to its last stored position. So that's what record active will do for you. We'll hit the Q button again and we'll do record changed. Record changed, again, this is very prevalent in a live event world where you're only recording the information that has changed. So that is another option. I'm going to hit Q again and we're going to go back to live. So those are the 4 different record type methods. I'm going to hit I could hit backspace to clear this out, and I would hit backspace once for Q and once for record and get them out, or I can do shift backspace and it will clear out the entire line all at once. So now let's take a quick look at recording, including time, delay, and follow. So I'm going to record this as Q5 and we're going to talk about time. So I can hit time and I can give this any particular time I want. I'm going to give it a time of 12. Well, that's fine. So I've recorded Q5 with a time of 12. All right, now let's talk about recording cues with delay. So we're going to bring up 11 through 15 to 30, and we're going to say record Q6 delay 3. And now we can see if I go back and I hit go, nothing actually happens for 3 counts because of the 3 count delay before it actually runs in the 3 count. And the other command that you can do when you're recording is follow. So we're going to bring up some other channels and we're going to say record Q7 follow 2. And we can see that Q7 has a follow 2 command on it. However, we really won't see what's going on with that until we record a Q8. And now Q8 is actually the auto follow Q, and it has the flag on it. All right, let's look at leading channel list recording. I'm going to bring up 2 channels, 27 and 28. And we're going to say 27, record Q9, enter. So notice 29 recorded, it put me in the queue, so it actually released 28. So that was an example of a leading channel list record. Let's also talk about labeling cues at the time of recording. So we're going to bring up 28 at 5, and what I'm going to do is say record, and I'm just going to pull out my external keyboard, hit the space bar, and type in label. So the last thing I want to talk about is record tracking. modes. So I'm going to turn on another channel and we'll go to record Q11, and let's talk about tracking modes. You have a button that says tracking options. Again, I refer back to your defaults, which are listed in the yellow text above the in the sidebar, at the top of the sidebar. We're currently in tracking mode, so levels are going to track from this point forward down the queue list until the channels get an instruction to do something else. If that's not what you want to do for this one time only, you can hit your tracking options button, and notice the first thing that pops up is queue only. So this means that any changes that are made will be stored in this queue only and will not continue on down the queue list. I'm going to hit the tracking options only button again and show you a new option, which is called queue only for intensities, tracking for attributes. What this does is marry the two worlds of queue only and tracking, so that queue only is applied to the intensity parameter, while tracking is applied to all parameters. I'm going to hit tracking options again, and we'll look at the last option, which is track back. What track back means is it will now track back up the queue list, and each channel will process and look back up the queue list to see where, in what queue it got its last change, and it will track back up but not go into nor through that queue where it got its last change. So those are the options for recording tracking modes, and this completes the tutorial for recording queues with command line. So thanks for watching this Neo operational video for software version 3.7. Go to the Philips Strand Lighting website at www.strandlighting.com for many more videos on Neo programming and operation.